been through this before. You're going to hear terminology like the Brown Act, open meetings, everything that you do as an extension of the city in the public arena. And it's very, very important that we adhere to, obviously, the laws, the policies, and procedures. We have a great team. Some of you have probably met Lori Liu, our city attorney from the law firm RWG. She's here tonight. I'll hand it over to her in a few minutes. So I'd like to thank her and her team for putting this together. A lot of information. And of course, Elaine Tran, our city clerk, for coordinating everything and putting this together. And Ava Roy, I don't know if you know Ava. Most of you remember Eduardo Gonzalez when he left the city. So Ava was hired to take over the reins and duties of Eduardo. So again, thank you for being here. It is, like I said, 2 hours, a lot of information. If you do have a few questions of me, I'd be happy to answer it. But if we don't take the time tonight, you all know where I live, right over there. Always happy. I always have an open door. But again, I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to introduce Lori Liu, our city attorney, to kick off the training this evening. So, Lori.
Thank you, Tom. Can everyone hear me okay? Microphone working? Well, thank you so much for all your attention this evening. I once sat in your seat. I actually started my involvement when I was living in the city of Brisbane on one of the committees and commissions. I served on an open space ecology committee. And from there, I actually continued my involvement and then served on the Brisbane City Council and served as mayor for 1 year. I was on the council from 2013 to 17. So I understand all the effort and hard work that you put in for your community. And everyone really appreciates your service. So without further ado, I'll get started. As Tom mentioned, I'm the city attorney for the city of Millbrae. And I'm joined tonight by my colleague Annette Brennan, one of our associates at RWG Law. And we're going to do a training and basically on good governance. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand, or if you're online, raise your virtual hand, and the city clerk will allow you to ask a question. There will also be a period for Q&A at the end, so don't feel like you have to, jump in at any moment. There will be time at the end as well. And we'll be going over, general concepts. If you have general questions or what we're looking for, if you have very specific, like fact-intensive questions of some situations that you're dealing with, for instance, dealing with conflicts or gifts, the best thing to do is to email your staff liaison, and then they can they can address your issues, and if necessary, elevate it to the city manager or to my office. So there's some basic principles of good government. Transparency is easier, process is important, and there is such a thing as bad publicity. So what we're going to talk about tonight is not just what are the rules, what are the legal requirements, but the idea behind it is the concept of, government is supposed to be transparent. So sometimes if you're in doubt on an issue, for example, on recusal, when in doubt, sit it out. So there's 4 groups of ethics laws that we'll go over. One is personal financial gain, personal advantages and perks, government transparency, and fair processes. Make sure I don't miss anything in my notes. Number 1 is personal financial gain. Oh, looks like now people can hear. So the Political Reform Act is where you'll find the requirements for disclosure and abstention. So disclosure is where you would have to fill out your Form 700s, which I know you're all familiar with. And there's an AB 1234 required training that you've probably gone through.
Share screen.
Oh, were you not?
Online. Give me a quick. Come up, please.
Back. Okay. And also, by the way, this is being recorded, so if you want to go back and review the video, you can just let your staff liaison or Elaine know. You can always get a copy of the presentation. Okay. So as I was saying, the Political Reform Act is where you'll find those disclosure requirements, abstention requirements. The AB 1234 training, which you probably have gone through, that goes into more of the nitty-gritty requirements. We're not going to go into that much detail on that tonight, but just more of a high level of the Political Reform Act. And then secondly is Government Section 1090, and that is a provision of the government code that deals with contracts. So as I mentioned, there's the Form 700, which you have to complete every year. You may be required to disclose the following: sources of income, real property interests, and that's like basically your home if you own a home, or also if you lease property. If you have investments, if you own any business entities, as well as the source of any gifts that you receive that are above $50. And the rule there is that you may need to abstain from a governmental decision if it has a material financial effect on your financial interests. And there's a whole analysis that we have to go through there. If you're getting to that point where you're looking at materiality, that's when you contact your staff liaison, and the city attorney's office would likely get involved to do the analysis. If there isn't a conflict that's identified, then would look at what the impact is on the public to see if the public generally exception applies, and that basically says if a significant segment of the population is similarly impacted, then you wouldn't have to abstain. So here's the four-step test for conflict of interest that we go through. We ask, will the governmental decision result in a reasonably foreseeable financial effect on one of your financial interests? And these are all sort of, legal terms of art that have been interpreted by the courts and by the FTC in their advice letters. Then we look at whether the effect would be material. If it is material, whether it has the same effect on the public generally. And then if it is material and no exceptions apply, that means that you have to abstain. So you can't abstain, meaning that you cannot make, participate in, or use your official governmental position to influence the governmental decision. So if you abstain, it means that not only can you not participate in the decision as a commission or committee member, but also you shouldn't be approaching staff and trying to influence their analysis of you. And as I mentioned at the top, the Political Reform Act is aimed not just at actual misconduct, but also the perception of misconduct and temptation. So the law really is quite conservative in this area, and even if it doesn't seem to be an actual conflict, oftentimes the courts will very conservatively approach it and ask for or require an abstention. Sometimes the lines are not always intuitive or obvious, and you may be frustrated. You may think, well, this seems like it should be okay, but the FPPC. So Where there is recusal, you shouldn't discuss the item with or influence your staff or colleagues. And also, you can't just sit it out by saying, oh, it's a conflict, I'm not going to attend. You actually have to state, you have to be at the meeting, you have to say, you have to identify the nature of the conflict. For example, you know, I live near the property that is the subject of this meeting, therefore I have a conflict of interest and I'm going to leave the chamber. And then you leave, except unless it's on consent, and then you would come back in once the item has been concluded. There is a limited exception for where you want to participate. You have a conflict, so you're not going to participate from the dais, but you really want to express your opinion on something because it's important to you. So that would be where you own or operate the property or the business, and you would recuse yourself, and then you would kind of switch hats, and you would say, I want to give public comment, and you would have to emphasize that you're speaking in your personal capacity. But as I mentioned, this is a limited exception, and we recommend using it very sparingly. There are penalties if you violate the Political Reform Act. It can be quite serious. It can lead to invalidation of the decision. There could be misdemeanor penalties, which could also result in the loss of office that you're holding. There could be fines, attorney's fees, which include yours and also others, and also, of course, it can lead to embarrassment, political and personal. So best to avoid that. So how can we help? So if you identify that there's a potential conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act, we encourage you, get out ahead of this as soon as you identify it. Talk to your staff liaison. They'll connect you with the resources with our office if necessary. You can also, there is a 1-800 number. You can call up the advice line for the FPPC. You can also request a formal advice letter. That would usually come through our office, and that it would be where, we usually don't do this unless it rises to the level of like a really significant issue where we think that it's a gray area. And the FPPC usually takes at least 3 weeks to turn around an advice letter. So we would need time for that process to be completed. And then if there's not enough time for all of that, like I said, if in doubt, sit it out. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Annette, who's going to go over Section 1090 of the Government Code. Anyone have any questions? Good place to pause for a minute. Questions?
Mainly, what you said is all regarding the money and the properties, right?
Your question relates to money and property and conflicts? Is that what you said? Okay.
So as I said, there's different levels of conflicts. It's about finances, yes. So it would be these are about financial interests in either property or businesses or sources. Correct. Can you talk into the mic, please?
If I don't deal with those money and budgeting, and I don't have any problem.
So if you don't deal with properties and budgeting, then you don't have any conflict?
No, it's if you own a business, even if you're not the one personally managing it, there's still a rule that you would have to disclose. You'd have to do the analysis. It doesn't matter what your role is in the business.
I think if there's also just to note, if there's something that is giving you pause, this is the opportunity to talk to your staff liaison. There are a lot of different topics that come up in the Political Reform Act, like owning a specific amount of stock or owning a specific property or renting a specific property. So if there is something that you have in mind, it's the time to talk to your staff liaison.
I'm just wondering, is this completely applicable to all commissions and all committees, or is this mostly to city councils? Because Sister Cities Commission, we don't deal with property or anything like that. I'm just wondering, because we've never signed a Form 700, so we've never had that presented to us to have to sign. So I'm just wondering if it's applicable.
It's not to all commissions and committees,
Right.
it's those that are code filers. You have to you have to consult with
Maybe
staff.
Planning Commission or something like that.
Definitely
perhaps?
planning
Yeah,
commission.
yeah, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
For the city, the filers are the Planning Commission and also Parks and Rec.
Okay. Great, thanks. I'll pass it on to Annette now.
Okay, hi. I don't have as wonderful of an introduction. I've never been a mayor. But I'm Annette. I'm an attorney with RWG, and I work with Lori, and it's great. I am going to talk about Government Code Section 1090, then pick up the next few sections as well. Government Code Section 1090 makes attorneys quake in our boots. The previous section, some of the violations included misdemeanors. This one, it's a felony. You can go to jail. This one does not only apply to Form 700 filers. This is anyone that might enter into a contract, which has a really broad definition. So this one is particularly important to comply with. So what does Government Code Section 1090 say? It says that a public official cannot make a contract where they are financially interested. And that's the easiest thing that has been interpreted so challenging. So an official is an officer or employee of the city. You are all officers of your city by sitting on the commissions and committees. A financial interest can include your financial interest or your spouse's financial interest in a contract. An example that I came up with is, say you own a videography business. So you go around with your probably phone and you make videos and you edit them, and the city has a TikTok commission, and the city says we want to improve our TikTok presence, to improve popularity on TikTok and make ourselves more hip. And then they say, maybe we can use your videography business or your spouse's videography business. Well, if you sit on the TikTok commission, that would be a Section 1090 violation. Because the city would be contracting with you or your company, and you would presumably be making money, and that's a direct contractual interest. There's also indirect contractual interests, like if you're just an employee of a larger company, and the city may be contracting with that company, that could also cause some trouble. And if the contract is made by either you as an official or by your body, so the entire TikTok commission. This is interesting because if you are the videographer, you can't just recuse and have the TikTok commission enter into the contract. The entire body is prohibited from entering into the contract under 1090. And making the contract is really broadly interpreted. It's entering into negotiations, it's drafting the contract, it's negotiating the contract. Basically, if you have hands or eyes on the contract, you are making the contract. It's not just signing on the dotted line. So if this sounds like something that may have happened to you, or you may have inklings of this coming forward in the future in your mind, this is the time to contact your staff liaison. This is something that we would, love to get an FPPC advice letter regarding. And one of the big issues with 1090 is once you violate it, you can't unring the bell. There's no way to say, oh, I'll recuse from here on out. Once you violated, you violated. There's no way to go backwards. There are two narrow exceptions. If you're in a situation where you're thinking about the exceptions, we're in too deep. One of them is a remote interest, so maybe you're the landlord of the videography That's pretty remote. And then the other one is a non-interest. This one is a really common exception, actually, where you may be a board member of a nonprofit and you are not paid in your role with the nonprofit, then there's no financial interest. It's a non-interest. Nonetheless, reach out to your staff liaison if you have a 1090 question. Oh, look, beautiful bullet point. If you have an interest in a pending contract, contact your staff liaison. It's especially challenging for committee members and commissioners because sometimes the numbers are so small that it's hard to abstain or recuse, or there may be so few options in the city that sometimes the FPPC finds some wiggle room, so an advice letter would be really helpful. And there's no way to undo a conflict if you violate 1090. And then this slide is just here to scare you. If you violate 1090, the contracts are not voidable, they're entirely void. So there's no saying, oh, it was a fair contract regardless. It's entirely void, no question. It's a felony, you could go to jail, you can't, run for public office again. Probably no one would elect you anyway. So best to just avoid 1090 as much as possible. And then here's just an example of defenses that don't work. If you say the contract was fair, nobody cares. If Lori tells you it's okay, the FPPC actually doesn't care about that. The FPPC is the ultimate decider of fact. We can give you advice and we can read FPPC prior advice, but we ultimately cannot even tell you that it's okay to participate and use that as a defense. And then also, like I said, you can't just abstain from the decision. The commission has to, or committee has to totally forego that. Okay, we're gonna shift gears. Any questions about terrifying 1090? Okay, totally switching gears. Now we're gonna talk about gifts, perks, and misuse of public funds. So the first one is gifts. If you are on a commission or committee to get a cool new Patagonia jacket, you're doing things wrong. Don't use your role with the city for personal gain. And also, like Lori said earlier, you should be mindful not only of bias or gifts that you're receiving, but also the appearance of bias because of gifts that you're receiving. You want to have a good presence in the city. You don't want people to think that there's some hidden dealings going on, so just be mindful of any gifts or perks you might be receiving, even if they do fall within the requirements of this. Here's an LA City Council member that took a few too many bribes and just recently began his 13-year prison sentence. Just as a little example of what can happen. His were pretty extensive gifts and bribes, thousands of dollars in a casino, escort services, don't go there. So what is a gift? It's not just casino chips and hotel stays. It's anything of value that you receive where you don't provide services of equal or greater value in exchange. So it's not just money, it's not just things that come in with bows. It can be repeated lunch invitations that are paid for by a developer. It can be tickets for you and your family to go to Six Flags. Yes, any gifts that your children receive count towards your gift limit. So yeah, it's not always super obvious, but it's good to keep in mind, is this a gift as someone is gifting you something? If you're sitting in this room, the gift rules apply to you. So there's two numbers that you need to remember for the gift limit. The first one is a floor, a reporting floor. So if you go over that floor, you have to start reporting the gifts that you receive. The second one is a ceiling. If you hit that ceiling, you can't receive more gifts. So the floor is $50. Anything less than $50 in a calendar year from a single entity, whether that's a person or a company, you don't have to really worry about. However, it's important to kind of keep it in the back of your mind, even if it's less than $50, because the $50 continues to stack up from January to December. So 10 $5 coffees becomes $50, and then you have to report it. The ceiling is right now $630. It changes every 2 years. If you hit $630, I did the math in my car, that's 126 $5 coffees, then you cannot accept that 127th $5 coffee, because that's more than $630. If I did the math wrong, you get the point. You cannot accept more than $630 worth of money for gifts in a calendar year from a single entity. There's exceptions for everything. There are tons of exceptions for this rule. Here are a couple of the big ones. The most obvious exceptions are relationships and families. So if you have a best friend that goes to a flea market and they say, oh my gosh, Joe loves metal roosters for his front yard. And they see a $100 metal rooster and they buy it for you. You don't have to have alarm bells going off. Oh my gosh, I have to report this metal rooster because it's more than $50. Your friend is an existing personal relationship. So as long as you didn't make friends with this person, while you're sitting as a commissioner or a committee member, it's probably okay. Give a little pause if they're a developer and you're on the planning commission, but it's probably okay. Another one is any family members. The family members are limited to this list. So if you have a great grandma that loves to buy you expensive presents with no expectation of something in return, you're like, oh no, now I have to report my grandma's gifts. You don't, because grandma is an existing personal relationship, so she falls into the first exception. Okay, there's also dating, things like that. This is just relationships in general. There's a lot of other exceptions. I'm not going to go through all of these. This is here. If you get the slides and you get a gift, you can look at this and ponder whether it might fall into one of these exceptions. The big one I'm going to say is the exchanges. Because the definition of a gift is something where you don't provide something in return. So if you're participating in a white elephant gift exchange with a $75 limit and you receive something that's $75, the presumption is you're also giving something that's worth $75. So an exchange is not receiving a gift. And if you have any questions, reach out to your staff liaison and they'll get it to us and we'll help you. So what happens if you get a $700 bottle of wine? That's over $630. There are a few things you can do. Or you can also, if you hit $100 on something and you just don't want to report it, it's a lot of work, there are also ways to get around having to report it. There's 3 things you can do. You have to do them within 30 days of receiving the gift. You can either return it to the person that gave it to you, unused, don't drink the champagne and give back an empty bottle. Has to be unused. Alternatively, you can figure out that it's an empty bottle of champagne that was worth $700. So you write the $700 check and you give it back to the donor. And then the final option, can't drink the champagne, but you can donate it to a government or charitable entity, and you can't claim a tax deduction. So those are your 3 options within 30 days if you receive a gift that's either over $630 or you just don't want to report it. So just to reiterate, disclose if it's over $50, refuse if it's over $630. You have to keep track during the calendar year, and you can either reimburse, return the gift, or donate it to a charitable or government organization.
And just to add, I think the FPPC now has an app for gifts where you can kind of keep a running tab. It's like got a spreadsheet thing. I've heard that was created a few years ago. So I know it's hard to go back at the end of the calendar year and think, oh my gosh, what did I receive in January? So as soon as you receive the gift, you should track it either through the app or through your own records.
Hilarious that they have an app. I didn't know that. Okay, so along a similar vein, sort of you using public resources for your own personal purposes. You should not be doing that. So this there's another slide about how important it is to avoid this during campaign involvement, but also day-to-day operations in your life. You shouldn't be taking advantage of your role with the city to do some sort of personal affairs. For example, if you have a poster printer or something like that, maybe you have a really nice laminator in the city offices, and you have a child that's in the local musical, you cannot use the city laminator or the city printer to print out your child's poster. Even if the child goes to the local public school and you're like, well, this is good for the city, it's good for the school, you can't be using city resources for your own personal affairs. You can't use listservs if you're a board member of a nonprofit, like we addressed. You can't use city listservs to send out email blasts about Adopt a Pet Day, things like that. So be really mindful about making sure you're using city resources for city activities. Like I said, there's a whole slide just for campaign use. If you are running for a position in the city or really anywhere else, don't be using city resources, especially for anything campaign related. Do not ask any sort of admin to send an email for you. Do not use free meeting spaces for campaign meetings. Don't make copies with the printer. All of that is a serious violation, and just avoid it as much as you can. Again, just use this for city activity and not for personal gain. It all goes back to that appearance of bias and appearance of issues within the city. We're trying to avoid that as much as possible. Okay, similarly, kind of the foundation for that issue is we cannot just give away public funds. You cannot, as a city official, unilaterally decide to give away something that is owned by the city. There either has to be a contract in place, and I'll give you an example because this feels very wordy. There either has to be a contract in place or the thing, whatever it might be, has to serve a public purpose. And you as an individual don't get to decide what a public purpose is. That has to be decided by the city at large. It's not a single person decision. So the foundational case is there was an older woman that came to the city, the front counter, and she says, I can't pay my water bill this month. And someone says, okay, pay it next month and we won't charge you the late fees. Well, the late fees are owned by the city at this point. So this individual person at the counter can't unilaterally say, I'll write off your late fees for you. I'll do you a favor, because that is gifting public funds. You can't make a decision to give things away, whether it's like a computer monitor or something like that. Don't be giving away public funds. Another slide here to scare you. There's lots of ways that this could be remedied, whether it's, again, going to jail, disqualification from your office, $5,000 per violation. So if every older woman in the community comes to the front counter and the clerk writes off their late fees, that's many, many violations. So it can rack up. Obviously, that example doesn't really apply to you all, but you get the idea. Yes, don't be giving away public. Okay, we're going to switch gears again. So any questions about gifts, public funds, or use of public things?
So next, we're going to talk about the Public Records Act and the Brown Act. So the Public Records Act, as you probably are aware, affords any person the right to inspect and be provided a copy of an identifiable public record. So if somebody reaches out to you, there's very specific deadlines in the Public Records Act about how soon a city has to respond. So if someone reaches out to you, and it usually would come through staff, but if someone from the public does reach out to you and says, it doesn't have to be like, I'm making a Public Records Act request. It can be a little less formal. It can be either an oral, it doesn't have to be written, but they're basically asking for some sort of record that they believe the city has. Then make sure you inform your staff liaison right away, because then the city has 10 calendar days to make a determination, respond to the requester on whether or not they have responsive records. There's a number of exemptions. So it's really important that you follow that. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this. We actually just a week or two ago provided a training, a separate training to staff on the Public Records Act. But if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to staff. Okay, the next thing we'll talk about is the Brown Act. The Brown Act provides that all meetings of the legislative body of a local agency shall be open and public. So it's about transparency. And all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting of the legislative body of a local agency except as otherwise provided in this chapter. So the Brown Act is what governs basic meeting structure. It's about, why it allows meetings, requires that meetings be conducted in the public, a publicly noticed meeting, not behind closed doors. So to whom does the act apply? What is a meeting? What rules apply to meetings, and what are the remedies for a violation? We'll go over that. So the Brown Act applies to what are legislative bodies. And those are defined as the governing bodies of the agency. It also includes subordinate boards and commissions if they've been created by formal action of the governing body. So the commissions and committees that you serve on likely are Brown Act bodies. Brown Act bodies, or a commission or a committee that's ad hoc, meaning that it meets irregularly, that would not be a Brown Act body. But Planning Commission, Parks and Rec, sister cities, those are all Brown Act bodies. So Brown Act bodies do not include, like I said, ad hoc or advisory committees that are composed solely of members of the legislative body that are less than a quorum of the legislative body. So the Brown Act also defines what a meeting is, which is the rules that apply to a meeting. They apply when there's a congregation of a majority, so that's over 50% of the body, meeting at the same time and location, which includes teleconference, to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action on an item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. So tonight's meeting, for example, is a Brown Act meeting. We had to notice it, publicly, because more than a majority of each of your boards or commissions was invited. So the Brown Act provides that serial meetings are illegal. So what is a serial meeting? Serial meeting is basically, it's a series of either direct or indirect communications by a majority of the body to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item of business or potential business. So this is something that you really want to watch out for. For example, if staff emails you, emails the entire commission, usually they'll write, do not reply all. And the reason for that is to avoid a Brown Act violation. Because if they say there's for example, they just say, we're going to be discussing this item on the agenda at the next meeting. One of you writes back and says, I don't like this project. Well, that's a problem. That's a Brown Act violation, because now you've informed your colleagues that sit on that commission or
committee what you think about it, and that hasn't happened in an open public meeting. And the serial meeting can happen a couple of different ways. So the two types, this is the helpful kind of image, the hub and spoke and the chain. So hub and spoke would be like, for example, say the city manager is in the middle, and then he is communicating with one member and getting their input, and then communicating with another, and not only getting their input, but then when they're communicating with the next commissioner committee member, maybe sharing the thoughts of the first commissioner committee member. And so he's now created a serial violation of the Brown Act because by gathering all the information and then disseminating it to more than a majority of the committee, that's now a violation because it's not in an open public meeting. The other way it can happen is in the chain. So that's like kind of like a game of telephone. It's like Commissioner A talks to Commissioner B, and then Commissioner B talks to Commissioner C, and then it keeps going down the line. And even though they haven't talked to each other, by the time it reaches the end of the chain, at least, you know, the last person for sure has a good sense of how the others feel. That's outside of a publicly noticed. So that could happen, for example, you know, I remember when I was on a city council, you know, I would literally have to say, if someone approached me, one of my colleagues, they would say, oh, can I talk to you about this? Can you be my person? We would call each other Brown Act buddies. Can you be my Brown Act buddy? And I would have to pause and say, I'm sorry, I've already talked with another council member about this issue, so unfortunately, I can't. So it's a good idea to have a Brown Act buddy, but you have to make sure that, like, monogamous, you know? Like you can't be each talking to other people at the same time. Okay. So there's some ways with the internet that there can be unintentional serial meetings. For example, like I said, group emails and texts. And then in social media, there's actually really stringent rules that apply. The rule right now is that if you are on social media and another member of your commissioner committee makes a comment or makes a post, you cannot even like or comment or make a cute little emoji because that can result in an inadvertent violation. And even if it's not a majority, even if it's just you responding to that one member, because it's part of social media and the public can see it, there's a chance that other commissioners or members can see how you're commenting. So let's go over some tips for electronic. I think the most important one is at the bottom, you know, don't reply all and be very cautious. And you can, you know, staff members can provide information about pending items and they can provide briefings and answer questions, but this is more for staff than for commissioners. But, you know, they can't basically poll, like I said, all the legislative body members and ask for their opinion, then communicate that to other members. Because all of that deliberation has to occur publicly on the dais. So this is what I had just talked about with social media. And interestingly, this statute, it was supposed to sunset at the end of this year. We just learned, however, that there was some late-breaking legislation that was signed into law on October 3rd. That's SB 707, which is making major changes to the Brown Act, including to this provision. So our office is right now analyzing this legislation. We'll be advising staff on how that would apply. And this new legislation will apply starting January of next year. So from now until the end of the where at least the current rules still apply. But if you have any questions on that, feel free to reach out to your staff liaison. So a lot of you may be wondering, well, what can I do on social media? So like, because I'm sure you're like, oh, I have this great information. I want to share it with my community. I want to let them know that we're having ribbon cutting coming up and talk about this exciting project in our neighborhood. Well, it's okay for you to provide information, provided you're not soliciting information from the public. So it can be sort of like one-way information. It's a really fine line because you can't control how people are going to comment. And then, I've seen this where it's really hard because you can't respond. You could make a post about a project, and I've seen this happen when I was on the city council, where you make a nice positive post, and then someone responds with some negative information that's factually inaccurate, and you can't respond. How frustrating is that, right? So just be careful about, what you post online, because what you might think is just helpful information can be twisted and turned by other members of the community. Online, people say things a lot of times that they wouldn't say in person, but they're hiding behind their screens. So, it gets really hard to control when you're on the internet, social media. So just be mindful of that. So this is interesting. Next, we'll talk about, can you block people on social media? So say you're making a post in a local group and somebody is just getting on your nerves and they're saying things that are totally inaccurate. Can you block them? Can you remove their comments? Well, as of 2024, there's a presumption that your social media is personal and you can exclude them, but it can be rebutted if you have authority to speak on the city's behalf, or if you're purporting to exercise your authority, if you're saying, I'm speaking as a commissioner or member, and not really wearing your personal hat. So we would advise that to avoid conflicts of interest or the appearance of that, don't say you're speaking on behalf of the city, because even one bad post can render you as a government actor. And once you become a government actor, then you can no longer censor speech on your own personal social media. Does that make sense? Okay, so next we'll talk about what are some exceptions to what is a meeting under the Brown Act. So a meeting doesn't occur if it's just individual contacts. If you are attending a conference or a seminar, like for example, last week, many mayors and council members and city attorneys went to the League of California Cities conference, and there's definitely more than a majority of certain boards and commissions and councils there. There's a specific exception to allow you to have that gathering. That being said, you can't then go off to the side and do city business and talk about projects that are coming before you. A meeting also does not include community meetings. Also another body of the agency, if you're going to another agency meeting, if it's an open and noticed public meeting of that body. Also, a meeting does not include social or ceremonial events. So, for example, I know there was the September 11th gathering recently, other events throughout the city. Those are not considered meetings. Ad hoc committee meetings, like I mentioned, then observation of standing committees. So for a regular meeting, there's basically two types of meetings under the Brown Act. There's regular meetings and special meetings. Regular meetings are the twice a month city council meetings, or once or twice a month commission or committee meetings. Those are set in advance, usually approved once a year by calendar, with the date, time, and location set by resolution or ordinance. For those, for regular meetings, the agendas must be posted 72 hours in advance. They have to include a brief description of the
items, and the agenda has to be posted and freely accessible to the public. In addition to regular meetings, sometimes agencies have to call special meetings. And those are, not on the regular calendar schedule, but, for whatever reason, this item, can't wait until the next meeting, so the city will set a special meeting. And that's usually called by the presiding officer or the majority of the commission or committee. For special meeting, the rule is you don't need 72 hours, you only need 24 hours notice. It also has to state the time, place, and be agendized. And each member has to receive notice. And unlike regular meetings, the body can only consider items that are on that agenda. So for example, like in regular meetings, you notice that there's always public comment in the beginning of a regular meeting. Well, in special meetings, the city is not required to put public comment, general items that are not on the agenda. It's required for regular meetings. And then there's adjourned meetings. So that's if you have a regular or special meeting and you haven't completed the city business, then you can adjourn it to a specific time and place. So this doesn't usually have to happen unless there's like a specific reason why you have to have an adjourned meeting. Like normally, if it's not stated, then it's just continue the hour for the regular meeting. This can happen if there's less than a quorum, and the secretary or the clerk may adjourn to the stated time. So some other agenda requirements include that agendas must be publicly accessible and distributed in advance to those who request it. Teleconferencing locations have to be included on the agenda. So during COVID, there were some special rules that applied that allowed for remote participation in meetings, but that's gone away. That was under what's called AB 361 when there was a declared state of emergency. Hopefully that's in the past, so now we revert to what are known as the traditional Brown Act rules for teleconferencing. And like say, for example, you're traveling, you're out of state or out of the country, but you really want to attend for committee meeting, you can still attend it, but you would have to let your staff liaison know in advance so that the location where you're attending from has to be actually written on the agenda, and then you have to receive it and post it at that location, just like it gets posted here at least 72 hours in advance. So, and it has to be open to the public. So it could be like a hotel conference. So the rule is that you can't have discussion or action on items that are not on a posted agenda. That's the absolute rule for special meetings, and there are some exceptions for regular meetings. And the exceptions are like, this happens occasionally, like there's an item that's an urgent item, but it didn't come to the city's attention until after the agenda was posted, and there's a need for immediate action and it can't wait until the next meeting. Well, then it can be added to the agenda at the time of approval of the agenda, but it has to receive a 2/3 vote and it has to meet the criteria of the immediate need to take action before the next meeting. Next, we'll talk about public comment at meetings. So the public does have a right to speak on any items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body for regular meetings, or a specific item of business on the agenda for any meeting. And usually, when public comment is received, it's sort of a one-way communication. It's not intended to be a discussion. Staff can sometimes respond briefly if requested to an item, but we would encourage you or discourage you from trying to respond yourselves to public comment. You can refer to staff and make questions. There are First Amendment considerations, so you can't prohibit criticism. Statements that are made at a public meeting are generally considered privileged. And the way that the city can regulate it is it has to be a reasonable regulation on public comment. So usually there's a time limit. In general, it's a 3-minute time limit per public comment. If we see that there's a lot of people putting in slips, the chair may limit it to 2 minutes or even less if it's a lot of people. Speaker cards, so you can request that people fill out the speaker slip. It's usually right over there. But if someone is refusing to sign one, they still have to be allowed to speak. Courts, the way that courts deal with obstructive behavior is that there is the rules of decorum. And so if someone is making public comment to the point that it becomes disruptive and the actual meeting can't be conducted, then the staff can intervene, or the chair can say, you know, please stop. You can give a warning. And then if after repeated warning, the person is still being disruptive, then they can be asked. And if it's on Zoom, then they can be muted. But I haven't seen anything too unruly here. You'd be surprised what happens in some other jurisdictions. But I find that Millbrae is generally pretty civil. So the other type of meeting that we have in addition to regular meetings and special meetings are closed sessions. And this is where you'll see, it's usually not commissions or committees, this is usually for city council, where there's matters being discussed that are confidential, and most commonly that would include like personnel matters, labor negotiations, real property matters, or pending or threatened or contemplated litigation. So as I mentioned before, meetings can be conducted by teleconference. One restriction is that a quorum of the legislative body still has to participate from locations within the jurisdiction. So that would usually be from City Hall. So you can't have everybody on Zoom. You have to have a quorum in person. And as I said, you have to identify it on the agenda, the location. So you may ask, well, what does it mean to be accessible? We've actually, not here, but we've received questions like, can I be on a cruise? Not sure about that. It has to be publicly accessible. You can't attend a meeting on Zoom from your car. You have to have basically the ability of the public to come in and attend the meeting. So if you're at a hotel, I mean, you could use your hotel room and leave the door open, but wouldn't recommend that. Usually a conference room is a better choice. And then the clerk knows that when there is teleconferencing, all the votes have to be taken by roll call. They can't do, all in favor because it's harder to keep track of that. Okay. And the next, so we're going to pause here. Does anyone have any questions about this? Yeah, and we're going to take a 5-minute break now, so you can use the restrooms, grab another bite to eat, and we'll pick up after that.
brief topic, and then we'll hand it over to Elaine. So this last section is on fair process laws. So it's, the whole concept of fair process laws are founded in the US Constitution and the Due Process Clause in the Fifth Amendment, which states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. What does that mean for commissions and committee members? It means that any decision or advising that you are doing as it relates to a person's life, liberty, or property, it's mostly property, requires reasonable notice to the individual and the public. We've talked a lot about notice at this point in the evening, opportunity to be heard. We have talked about opportunity to be heard, public comment, things like that. So this section is really about you being an impartial decision maker. The Due Process Clause is implicated in local government when your agency, your committee conducts a public hearing. A really common one here for the Planning Commission would be any land use entitlements. If you're considering revoking a license, like Lori said, personnel hearings are normally an issue for City Council, but that's another really common due process issue. And so the impartial decision maker, like I said, is the main topic for this pretty brief section. To be an impartial decision maker is really challenging, but I'm sure you're all up for the task. Everyone is going to have some opinion about an issue that you're hearing. Obviously, you care about the decisions that you're making, the advice that you're giving, because you wanted to be on your commission or your committee. You care, which is great. You have opinions and perspectives about the things that you're doing. Just having a belief, a small belief or knowledge about the topic is not per se disqualifying. A disqualifying bias is either concrete proof of a specific prejudice against a person that's going to be affected by the decision or advice or recommendation that you're pursuing. So, some clear evidence like a text or an email or a picture that you as a commission or committee member have some sort of prejudice. Or it can be a bias which is sufficient to impair your ability to decide any matter or advise or recommend any matter on appropriate grounds. So if you are, I'm trying to think of like a reasonable example, but if you're on the Planning Commission and there's a developer and the developer like cheated on your daughter or something, and you just really hate that developer now and everyone knows that you hate this developer, that's pretty concrete proof. If you've gone on Facebook, which is a whole slew of other things that Lori already talked about, or you have texts about how much you hate this developer for cheating on your daughter, that is probably a disqualifying bias. If you just disagree with maybe something that they did 25 years ago, that's not a disqualifying bias per se.
Just to add to that, if, like, say you're on the Planning Commission and this matter is going to come before you, you should not be going to City Council if it happens to go to City Council before it gets to Planning Commission and giving public comment with your strong feelings about the project, because then that shows that you can't be unbiased, that you already are feeling like you know how you're gonna vote on the project. And so it's really important that if you see a project, especially like major projects coming down the pike, as much as you wanna get ahead of it and voice your opinion, we advise you to wait until it comes before your legislative body, and then that is the time to express your opinion.
Yes, public comment that is recorded and before the members of the public is definitely concrete proof of prejudice against a decision. Yeah, question? Into the mic, please.
What if what if there's a community group that you're associated with? You're not on the board, but people know you're involved in that community group. They want to send in some kind of letter or public testimony on the project that's coming before the commission or committee.
I think that goes back to, obviously, you're going to have some sort of opinion. If you are signing this letter or you are presenting this letter, it is very important that if you choose to do so, you do so in your individual capacity and not as a commission or committee member. Do you look like you have
but
something
I think
to
what
add?
he's asking is if, like, say you're involved with a community organization and that organization is sending in a letter, but you don't really have anything to do with it, you're just like a member of that organization, then I think that's okay.
Yeah.
It wouldn't come back to you as a disqualifying interest unless you're putting your name on the letter or attending the meetings where they're formulating their strategy.
Okay. And this goes back to what Lori said in the beginning, when in doubt, sit it out. If you find yourself signing a letter or you want to sit in on these meetings, things like that, if you find that you can't be fair, judgment call, don't participate. It's going back to that appearance of bias. You don't want to make it look like a decision was made for your own personal benefit or your own personal opinions. So when in doubt, sit it out. Try your best, even if you have an opinion on something, to keep an open mind, open the doors in your brain to all of the possibilities of what would come out of this decision or recommendation. And in general, again, avoid any appearance of bias. These are some closing questions to leave you with as we close out this section and get ready to turn it over to Elaine. Think about what would make the public that you represent in Millbrae feel the best or inspire public confidence in their city. With whatever commission or committee you are on, how can we inspire public confidence? What would you want to read about on the front page of your newspaper, which is inevitably on your cell phone today? And how do you want to be remembered in your time on your committee or commission? Because there are memorable moments that are going to happen, and do you want those to be positive or negative? Your choice. If you have any questions regarding any of this good governance advice or ethical issues, the first step will always be to reach out to your staff liaison. They will either direct you to us or they can field it appropriately. We can seek advice from the Fair Political Practices Commission. Normally that does come from the city attorney office. But you can always call them and they can give non-definitive advice over the phone, but
But the phone is really, it's just a phone call.
Yeah.
So, you don't have any documentation.
yeah,
So.
non-binding, that was the word.
Right. So the advice line is, for what it's worth, basically.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be as good as an actual letter, an advice letter, or seeking advice from your city attorney through staff.
And then there is a helpful link at the bottom, the Institute for Local Self-Government, that you can peruse if you see fit. And that's it for us, so we'll hand it over to Elaine. Should we wait until the very end for Q&A? Okay.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to swap out the slide really quick, and then So thank you all for being here, joining us in person and online. Please make sure you sign in if you haven't already. And then also online, if you don't mind, just emailing me and saying you're here, you're attending. I know some members didn't rename themselves, but if you don't know how to do that, you can always email me. So I'm providing standard general information on commission and committees. So once appointment and resignation. So once you're appointed or reappointed to a commission or committee, each member will need to meet with the city clerk's office to do your oath of office. So that way you can officially be a official member of that commission or committee. And orientation will be provided by your staff liaison, and then also I could assist as well. So let's say you have additional questions, you feel free to always contact me, and then we could schedule like a one-on-one as well. I do have a calendar on my email, so you could just book a time that you would like to meet, and if there's certain topics you want me to cover, I'll be happy to do that. And I could also bring in additional resources as well, like if it's going to be conflict, I'll make sure I reach out to Lori. And then, once you're appointed, you would attend all the scheduled meetings as an official capacity as a commission and committee member, and you will need to follow all open meeting laws and ethics standards and your commission committee's bylaws, as well as the rule of orders on how to run a meeting. So we do have some materials here at the staff desk that you can bring home with you. One of them is a script on how to run an efficient meeting. I will also share that through email as well, so you guys have a digital copy. So members will work on items that's on the commission committee work plan. And I just want to make sure that all commission and committee know that your presence at meetings are very important. That is how the business of the city get done. We need to make sure we reach quorum to actually have a meeting. And so each body have a regularly scheduled meeting date, time, and location. So if you're unable to attend, please let staff know as soon as possible. For example, if you have a vacation or if your daughter is going to a championship game and you can't make it and you know that in advance, please tell us, because we want to be respectful to other members as well. So if there's no quorum, we could do an announcement so people don't actually have to drive in and just to find out the meeting's canceled. Also, it's important to staff because if there's certain business that needs to go before a commission or a committee that is going to be in line to go to council, or for some kind of business to run on schedule, we could reschedule like a special meeting if needed. And we won't be wasting time and efforts. And if you're unable to attend any meeting, again, please inform your staff liaison, because members are subject to removal for unexcused absences. And as you can see here, for a period of 60 days or more, 3 consecutive meetings, or greater than 30% of meetings in a fiscal year. And we understand sometimes life situations change and you may not have that time commitment anymore, or you feel like you just need to resign. We understand that. If you want to do that, you can email me and your staff liaison to let us know that you want to do that. Just let us know when you want that to be effective. Because there is a requirement for me to publish a notice of vacancy before the council could take action on recruiting and also appointment. All right, and then there's also training requirements of certain commission and committees, like anti-harassment, which is a 1-hour training, and an ethics training that's 2 hours, and is due every even years by December 31st. And that typically is Planning Commission and also Parks and Rec. So meetings can be canceled for a few reasons. One of them is because we don't have the quorum of the voting members, and there's no agenda items, or it falls on a holiday. If there's no quorum at a notice meeting, after 15 minutes of the regular scheduled time, then we will cancel a meeting. Notice of cancellation will be posted at the door, so like the community members would know that the meeting is canceled. If there's no quorum, no action can be taken from the commission or committee. And we can adjourn the meeting to another date, but the secretary chair will help determine that. So commission committee work plan. So the commission committee work plan is developed by the commission committee, but it's tied to the council goals. The work plan should outline the key tasks and objective, timeline for completion, and any budget requests that would support the commission or committee's work. The only commission that don't have a work plan is the planning commission. So work plan is every 2 years and usually start in January and presented to council no later than end of April for adoption. However, the exception is the Youth Advisory Committee because they only have a 9-month term. So they present their work plan to council in January every year. So as far as the duties of chair and vice chair, the chair will preside at all the meetings, helping it run efficiently. Hopefully, if you guys find the script helpful, that'll be nice to just use that if you have any questions. And then they'll call for a special meeting when appropriate, sign off on official documents, ensure action are properly recorded and taken, and work with staff on determining agenda items. The vice chair steps in when the chair is unavailable and assume all duties and responsibilities in their absence. So part of your bylaws, the election of chair and vice chair is done every June. So the new officer will assume their role in July at the start of the fiscal year. If both the chair and vice chair is absent, the most senior member based on service length will call the meeting to order, and the membership present will elect the chair pro tem to preside over the meeting. And remember that both positions as vice chair and chair serve at the pleasure of the commission and committee. And we mentioned this tonight a couple of times. Oh, actually, I'm a little bit fast. This is council liaison. So besides planning commission, there is a council liaison assigned to every commission and committee. And their duties really help the commission and committee be informed of city events and communicate back to council and city manager regarding your activities and plans. That's usually during council comments. And they advise the commission committee if they're thinking about like an action that might need legal or city review before they take action. So then you're not doing anything that you're not supposed to do yet. That might be prohibited. And then they also will look into like the commission committee's like questions. They would tell staff so we could kind of work on it and provide answers to the commission committee. But what the council liaison are not supposed to do is they can't participate in the discussion or decision of the commission and committee, and advise what the group should and should not do, and offer their opinions or advocate for or against matters that come before the commission committee. This is part of the council protocols. So if you have any questions, please let us know. So we have staff liaison and secretaries for every commission committee, and they are appointed by the city manager. Most of the commission committee have one staff liaison. However, there is like one or two that have more than one. Their duties includes like keeping the commission committee records, help preparing agendas and action minutes, and provide staff reports to ensure that like the commission committee's work aligns with city operations and procedures. If you have any question or need background information, always start with your staff liaison. They will coordinate with their director, the city manager, city attorney, and sometimes me. As Lori mentioned in her presentation, they are your first go-to. So basically, we understand certain things are like time is of the essence, like conflict, right? So what happens is because they work with you, they know what item is going before you. They could provide more background, and we could work together faster to provide you with the answer. The next thing is the agenda anatomy. So this is how a typical meeting agenda looks like. And this is what, like, kind of like a definition for each one. And I know a lot of you are familiar with it, and some new members may not be familiar. So of course, on every agenda, there's a meeting location, date, and time. There's a call to order to start the meeting, a roll call to establish if there's a quorum to proceed to regular business, pledge allegiance, and then our land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgement is not required to be read out loud, but is encouraged if you would like to do that. Agenda overview is where you guys review the agenda, and then if there's any requests to move certain items before another, usually is done there. You would need a consensus to do that. And then next will be approval of minutes. This is like when you vote the previous minutes to approve them. Then after that is public comments. So public comments is for items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the commissioner committee. Each speaker can be given no more than 3 minutes to speak. However, the chair may reduce the time equally so everyone gets a chance to speak. And that should be announced before the speakers start, before any speaker is called. I just want to note that public comment, the public can provide public comment on any item on the agenda. It's not just for public communication. So they could speak on public communication about things not on the agenda. And then let's say you have 5 other items, you could put their name for every single item there are, and then you just need to make sure you take public comment before there's a vote. You can't vote on anything before taking public comment, okay? It's a nice practice if you just ask, is there any public comment? If there are none, then you could go ahead and move on to the motion and action and taking the vote. Yes, give me a second, let me give you a mic.
Why don't you check on public communication and the role that that individual plays in the meeting? Like their participation after their 3 minutes.
What do you mean? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, I've had public communication where the person attempts to participate in the meeting and speaks out in the meeting. And I just want to know
Like
what the rules are
continuously?
there.
Okay, it should not be a back and forth. They should really just provide a comment within time allotted, right? Your staff liaison should have a timer. Sometimes if you're in a regular meeting, you may not, we use like our phones to time. So once it's done, like you could tell them that they're out of order and give them a warning saying, hey, please, you already had your chance to speak. Now is other people's turn, or it's time for discussion so we could advance this.
So they cannot participate in this particular case. This individual was commenting on items that we were discussing as part of the meeting. Do they have, is that within the right? I mean, something came up about, okay, we had to stop and say, okay, allowing public communication for this individual regarding this item. I just want to really understand what the rules are in this.
So the person giving public comment would have the opportunity to give the public comment, but they wouldn't participate in the ongoing discussion. So then if they keep talking, the chair would say, thank you for your comment. And it ends, it's 3 minutes.
So after 3 minutes, they really do not have, so basically, you know how like if you watch council meeting, right? Once the 3 minutes is up, then they can't provide further comments. It's like you would just rule it out of order, just tell them you already have an opportunity to speak, now it's time for discussion.
Yeah. Well, they don't participate in the meeting. I mean, if they want to stand up and say, oh, I have another public comment, it's then up to the chair to decide. The chair doesn't have to say, I mean, here in Millbrae, I usually see it's just 3 minutes and you're up. In Brisbane, we were a little more lax, and usually we would allow people to come up for a second public comment, but that's not the standard. It's just public comment, thank you for your comment, and then it goes to the board or commission to discuss the item.
after the public comment and everything's done, and we move on to the agenda items. And we're working on an agenda item, what you're saying, and that person has a comment during the agenda item conversation. I think that's what she means, correct?
So they have the right to public comment. Anyone has the right to public comment under public communications, and that's on items not on the agenda. But then they also have the right to public comment on every item on the agenda. They have their 3 minutes on
Yep.
each item. But if they continue trying to participate, then if it gets to the point where it's an actual disruption, then the chair can intervene and say that, thank you, we need to move on now.
And it's not a conversation.
Yeah.
It's you, and then they get their 3 minutes. It's not back and forth.
Yes, that's correct. But then it should be about the item subject matter. It can't just be like, I still want to talk about the last item. You understand? So they could comment on every single item as long as it's pertaining to that item. The only one that does not require them to talk about anything is the public communication. I'm sorry, I think, could you make sure you use the mic? Because I want to make sure people joining us virtually can hear it.
And the protocol for this individual having public communication on any of the agenda items, is it they raise their hand and say, I'd like to have public communication, or what is it?
Usually they have to submit a speaker slip, and on the paper, it will say, what item are you speaking on?
On a committee? This is a committee, though.
Yeah, committee, so
Speaker.
Do you
a
use
speaker slip is provided to all commission committees, so if they want to use it. So let's say you have a committee that, I feel like if everyone just follow the rules, then that way we could kind of point to hey, please fill out a speaker slip. They're not required to fill out a speaker slip. By law, you can't require them to fill out a speaker slip. You can encourage it. But what you can do is ask them to fill it out so you can line them up to speak for every item. So if they fill it out, you call their name when it's time for that item, right?
And if they don't fill it out, what's the protocol?
Like Elaine said before, it's best before you vote on an issue, just get in the habit of saying, is there any public, or before you move on to the next issue, just get in the habit of, is there any public comment? And the public comment should go at the end, and then you move on to item number 2. Is there any public comment on item number 2? Public comment.
So if this individual chooses to stay the entire meeting, I should check with, just offer for every single,
You announce it publicly, so it's not you're just addressing to them. It's like, is there any
Sure.
public comment? Yeah.
okay. Trying to understand the protocol.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
It's great to know, especially I know sometimes dealing with public comment, you want to make sure you do it right so everyone have an opportunity to speak. So that's how you would handle it. And basically, what I try to keep in mind is would it be fair? Would it be fair for everybody? If you allow someone a second chance to speak, would you be able to allow everyone else to do that? So whatever you do, you need to be fair. And that's why you announce the time limit before you call on people speaking. That way, everyone knows, everyone have 2 minutes. It's not like someone provide public comments, they have 3 minutes, and then it's like, you know what, we don't have enough time. Let's switch to 2 minutes each. Do not do that. Everyone needs to have the same equal amount. But let's say public comment, you allow 2 minutes. But regular items, because there's only 2 speaker slips, you're like, okay, 3 minutes is fine. That's okay too, but you need to follow by the item. I hope that's clear. If not, I could try again. Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit nervous. So next on the agenda anatomy, we have public hearing. And this generally only applies to City Council and Planning Commission. So this is really a formal hearing to conduct, to get public testimony on certain issues. So you just announce that the public hearing is open. And then you're saying any more public comment. And then you generally, it's not required, but we actually want everyone to do a motion and a vote to close the public hearing.
Yeah, and the reason for that is that there's an administrative record for the public hearings. And so you want to be clear that all the evidence is within the public hearing time period. And if then somebody wants to give another public comment and it's already been like, public hearing's been closed, commission is discussing the item, then the chair would have to have a motion to reopen the public hearing, take the comment, and then close it again. So it's like a chapter of a book. You need to close the book. So you have that record that would then be the administrative record in case there's an appeal. It's sort of like all the testimony, all the evidence is in one place.
All right. So the next item is existing business. It's unfinished business or update to an item that came before your meeting body. So that's generally like heard before new business. And under new business is just really any new item before the meeting body, and it's for your consideration. Then up next, we have the subcommittee reports, because a lot of times our commission committee have work plans, and this is a good time where the subcommittee update the meeting body so that everyone know where the progress is. And after that is commission and committee reports, if it's applicable to your commission committee. So it's reports from members on items that are within the meeting body's jurisdiction, but not up for discussion. And that's important to note.
Right, I was just going to add to that oftentimes there's a tendency when there's a commission or a committee report for other committee members to then say, oh, well, what about, they want to kind of dig more into that issue, and the chair will hopefully, or the liaison will say, this hasn't been agendized. This can come back for further discussion if you'd like to add it to a future agenda.
So after that is a council report. It's really for council to report what's going on in the city. It's also not up for discussion. And it's important to note that just like Lori mentioned, during public comment, someone would ask a question and they would expect an answer right away. Just like from a public's point of view, right? If it's not agendized and you guys are talking about it, other people won't notice that this is going to be part of discussion. So just make sure that, there's certain parts of the agenda it's not for discussion.
And the reason it's not for discussion is because of the Brown Act. If it starts to get discussed, it's not agendized, so the public's not there. They don't know it's coming up. So it's not that we're not, trying to hide it and we don't want to quell the discussion. It's like legally not allowed. You have to have it agendized.
Yeah. All right, next is staff announcements. So also not for discussion, it's really an update to the commissioner and committee about what's going on in the city, like upcoming events. I know a lot of your commission committee liaison mentioned about that there's training. So that's basically what it is. And then after that, it's adjournment. So lastly, we want to provide resources, not only for our commission committee members, but also our public and anybody interested in joining. So if you go on our website under government, each commission committee are listed, and then within your pages, you will see like an overview of what your mission is, what the membership is like, and requirements for being a member, as well as the term and also your meeting information for anybody who want to participate or consider joining. Also, like it will link to your agenda and minutes, as long as the membership who is part of that commission and committee, when they were appointed, the expiration date, staff liaison, and also other related information like your establishment resolution or your ordinance, your bylaws, your work plan, and anything that have to do with your commission and committee. So if you want to read up on your commission and committee, that's strongly encouraged, and then feel free to refer all your friends to these web pages so they could join our commission committee and make a difference in the city. I'm always available. Feel free to email me. And so here's my contact information.
Thanks. And can I just add one more thing that about due process that I think is important, especially how many of you are on planning commission? Any planning commissioners here? Okay, good. So as you know, you have development projects come before you, and if you haven't experienced this yet, developers like to contact planning commissioners and say, can I tell you about my project? And we usually advise, if it's a public hearing, we strongly advise that you don't meet with developers before public hearings. And the reason for that is, you have to have due process, which means whatever information that they might give you privately, you would then have to share, and disclose all of that information, summarize it, of course, but disclose it at the public hearing. In addition, if you meet with them privately, it's really hard to then restrain yourself and not talk about how you feel about the project. So rather than take that risk, we advise that you just tell the developer, thank you so much. I would prefer that we receive your presentation at the hearing, and then I can make sure that all of my colleagues have the same information and that we're keeping an open mind. So just some final thoughts on that.
Yeah, and so right now we're opening up our Q&A session, and we have one hand raised online, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. So if you could please accept it and also kind of give us your name. Please accept the unmute. I renamed you because I didn't know your name, sorry. The person with your hands raised, we unmuted you, so you just need to accept it, and then you could go ahead and ask your question. Anybody in the room that have a question? Because I don't think she or he seen the pop-up yet. Can you try again? Okay. Well, I don't know why it's not working, but please feel free to email us your questions, and I'll make sure that I share with legal and also the city manager. That way, we can make sure that your question is heard and answered.
This is just a comment and announcement. I am part of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, known as EDAC, and Patrick is here. And we have a small business educational series. And on Tuesday, November 18th, we have our second one, and it's a business networking. Everyone is welcome. Please come and enjoy. Come for the food, come for the company, come to meet others. Starts at 5:30 at the Millbrae Rec Center. So mark your calendars, Tuesday, November 18th at 5:30, and hope that you can all come. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're gonna, Aline, do you have a question for us online?
No.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate everyone being here, and not only that, for the time and effort that you volunteered to the city and making a difference. I really, really appreciate everyone here, and also the people that join us online as well. So thank you very, very much.